In this video, we're going to talk about a viral article that's got millions and millions of views, right? It's been all over Twitter. It's getting hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube too. You can see it has 6.6 million views here. And it actually went so viral that X or Twitter has like this viral summary of it because so many people are reacting to it. You've probably seen it. This term, the great feminization, right? It's come up quite often, right, about women in the workplace and how it's driving men out the workplace. And it's an extremely popular article. I've seen it many times, right, coming up in the last few weeks. So let's go through it in a bit of detail. Now, what it's saying here is in Compact magazine, this essay was published in October 15th, and it argues that, and it's actually written by a woman who's anti-feminist, I guess you can call her. She says that women are dominating fields like law, journalism, and medicine. And what's happening is this is driven by anti-discrimination laws in the sense that these are DEI hires. Many women are being forced or pushed into these positions of good roles in law, in the journalism field, medicine, and academia. And it's creating a dynamic where not only women are favored, but feminine behavior traits are favored. So maybe it becomes overly focused on empathy rather than excellence in terms of output. It becomes more focused on consensus rather than competition, right? So you don't have a healthy competition between men trying to be the best in business. It's more about having a consensus opinion rather than having the right opinion. And what it does is when you have more women in these environments, and bear in mind, this is a woman writing the article, she says it creates more cancel culture and it's all about fitting in. It becomes basically like teenage girls in the high school. It's all about fitting in and, gossiping negatively about other workers. And what it does is because it creates cancel culture, particularly in the legal field that we can see, many men get falsely accused. It becomes about demonizing someone on the basis of destroying their reputation rather than what the facts are. Then it comes down to undermining the legal field, as we can see here. And what it says is they say it destroys the merit-based system. DEI destroys meritocracy. And then on top of that, what they're explaining here is that it makes everything about woman, essentially, right? It becomes the focus on woman, and you're removing all the good things you typically see, which would be meritocracy, productivity, competency, honor, brotherhood, teamwork. Typically what you see in a small group of tightly connected men working together, right? Which I often mention about like having a tribe of men working together, a small marketing agency or business where you have maybe 5 skilled men working together. That's typically how things get done really well. Even if you look at the launch of many businesses, a Microsoft, Amazon, whatever it would be, it'd typically be 5 guys who are, 5 to 10 guys who are super focused on what they're doing. They have a grand vision, they're working on it, they're really committed to making it work and having some honor amongst them, right? There's a German term for this, Männerbund, where you have like men working together quite closely to achieve results. This has all been removed to make women the center of attention and validation, not because women are more skilled at the roles. It's just about, showing them preferential treatment out of a sense of political correctness. And as you can see, it's got 6 million views, as I mentioned here. She's saying here, and there's a couple things that have gone viral, like you can see her tweet, which is summarizing a couple points. It has 800,000 views, right? A woman can sue their bosses for running a workplace that feels like a fraternity house. Like if you have a boys club type of dynamic at work, a woman can sue them and say, oh, women feel uncomfortable, it's toxic, it's problematic. But men cannot sue women for making the workplace feel like a Montessori kindergarten, which seems like a joke, but it's when women are in the workplace, it becomes quite infantilized, right? If I'm using the word correctly, it becomes kind of childish. It becomes petty. Nothing can be serious because women want to be the center of attention. Or in other cases, it creates a dynamic whereby it just lowers the seriousness of the tone of the work. There's the only way I can put it, because women will be chit-chatting about their personal lives, their relationships, having kind of conversations that are small talk that have absolutely nothing to do with the work. It basically makes men can't have banter amongst themselves about anything. And then also it makes the work just seem a bit more like irrelevant because they're so consumed in their inner world and their personal life, a lot of these female workers. And it just destroys the work environment. There's no other way of putting it. Then she says here, again, you can see how high the view count is. She doesn't have a big Twitter account, right? She has 50,000 subscribers, but her tweets are getting like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views. This has 300,000 views, and it's just one sentence. She says, feminization is not an organic result of women outcompeting men. It's the artificial result of social engineering. And what she's basically saying is a lot of these women are being artificially propped up in these management roles because of the bias to hiring them, because they have all these companies that set all these targets for showing preferential treatment to women. So they're basically being, and I've dealt with this, and many companies I can't even name, but you know which companies I've worked at. You see it all the time. You'll be working with a woman and she doesn't know what she's doing. She doesn't have the technical skills to be doing it, but she's just been put there by the simps that work at her level, the simps who are more in senior management and the simps who are more junior than her, who are helping her do the work, helping her manage her constant daily emotional turmoil and BS, because that's just a political correct approach. Management get hired and management get bonuses for having more diversity and equality and hiring more women for the sake of it, right? Not hiring them on the basis of their abilities. You just see this all the time. And then we've got this article here, and like I say, this is what has gone viral. So a lot of people don't know about like the origins of cancel culture, of this kind of extreme feminist DEI type of thing. And there's many different things. We could go back decades, but one of the kind of key early turning points was back in 2005, right? In 2005, you had Larry Summers. Yeah, that's his name, Larry Summers, who was giving a talk at university, right? So he was giving a talk at a university. And what ended up happening is that he was talking about how it makes sense why a woman would be underrepresented in hard sciences, partly due to different availability of aptitude at the high end. Now, he wasn't necessarily saying that women are dumber than men. He was saying men and women have different skills. Now, typically in any common sense society, when we're not living in this BS clown world that we have to all endure these days, he was simply saying, to put it simply, that look, men and women have different skills. And in my opinion, partly the reason a relationship would work well is if you have men and women who have complementary dynamics, right? A man might be focused on strength, a woman's focused on beauty. A man's focused on logic, a woman's focused on emotion. And that's how you raise a happy, healthy family and build a society, because you have a balance of both. What ends up happening is that when you have situations where like, oh, we have to have more women in STEM. It's like STEM are typically technical careers and technical jobs. Yeah, I'm sure there's a minority of women who might be interested in that and they have the availability to go and work in that. But it makes sense. If it makes sense and it's logical if most women do not opt for that. They go into nursing, they go into teaching young kids and things like that, which just naturally match a woman's basic nature. The same way a man's nature might match working in manual labor, working in an oil rig, right? Or doing highly technical things like doing coding. So rather than force this type of thing where we have to meet these quotas for putting women in this area of the industry or another particular niche in the country, you should just let it flow naturally. So we shouldn't be going, oh, we need 50% women in STEM. How is that progress? You're basically pushing more women to do something that they, at a large scale, at a macro level, might not feel comfortable with. At an individual level, of course, you're going to have exceptions where some women want to be in those highly technical roles. So if we continue with this, and this is what I'm talking about, the first level of cancel culture. So this guy pointed it out, Larry Summers, right? But some female professors in attendance were offended and they sent his remarks to a reporter in defiance to the off-the-rule record, right? So he was discussing this thing off the record, which means that, okay, don't put this in writing, don't go and tell everyone else. We're having some level of privacy and honor amongst not sharing this information. But of course, woman being woman, they're going to gossip, they're going to tell others, and they went to the media and basically tried to destroy this guy's reputation and say, oh, he's trying to say women are dumber than men and men are better than women, and it's just like became completely ridiculous. These women kind of aimed to cancel the president of Harvard at the time, and this is like the cancel culture, right? Before there was Me Too, before this all false allegations and accusations, anytime a man says there's basic biological differences between a man and a woman, he was going to get cancelled. And that's what happened to this guy here. So they tried to destroy his reputation, and it's it became completely ridiculous. Now, if we look at this tweet here she's saying, look, people think the differences between men and women is that men are logical and women are emotional. That's true, but it's a tiny fraction of what the feminization means. For example, men have a concept of an honorable enemy. Men can engage in conflict with an opponent and still respect them, right? The same way you can have a different debate, ideological debate, like he was trying to have here by expressing his point, and you'd shake the other guy's hand and then move on. But women don't have that. When women create an enemy, they have spite, they have a bit more vengeance. That's when they go and try and get you cancelled. They're going to see you as below human, you're subhuman garbage, and there's no rules to govern the fight. That's when they might do things like going and gossiping around you, trying to destroy your reputation behind your back to senior management, to other co-workers at your level, or basically, go and snitch on you to the media, even if you're having a private meeting. And you see this not only at work, and so much of drama you'd expect in your personal life in a relationship with a woman when you're between boyfriend and girlfriend, husband and wife, family members, or other women, this type of grudges that they're holding, and this petty, vindictive behavior, bitchy type of behavior, you have to deal with it in the workplace now because they've artificially propped up so many of these type of women in the corporate environment. And she goes on here, she says the cancellation itself of Larry Summers saying there are biological differences between men and women and it makes sense for more men to be in STEM careers. Essentially, what he was saying is all cancellations are feminine because cancel culture is feminine behavior, right? And what she tries to point out as we go on throughout this article is she is saying, cancel culture is essentially an obvious downstream effect of putting more women in the workplace. Cancel culture, Me Too, DEI, woke, anything that's woke and progressive and liberal, a lot of the times it is downstream from feminization in the workplace, more women in the workplace. Of course, you'd have more political correctness in the workplace when you put more women there. You'll have more emotionally driven workplaces if women are there rather than facts and logic, right? You're going to have more team events. You're going to pretend the work environment is, the work is your family, team is your family, if you're going to put more women there, because these are woman-driven instincts that they should have in the home, they should have in a relationship, they should have with their kids, but they're projecting it on their co-workers, they're projecting it in the work environment, right? The environment these women are trying to create within the office is what they should be creating in the domestic life, in their home, in their personal life. It says cancel culture is simply what women do whenever there are enough women in a field. When you hit a critical mass, not just a couple women in the workplace, but maybe, she doesn't give a specific percentage, but I would say if you have 20%, I would say 10% of women in the workplace, it changes the dynamics. And we all know men aren't going to make certain jokes, men aren't going to be discussing certain topics. Everything has to revolve around what women find interesting. For example, I remember working somewhere and a major American investment bank I won't name, and a woman kept complaining that the men were talking about football. Now, I personally don't watch football or soccer. I don't have an interest in it, but women were complaining that men are not being inclusive of women because they're always talking about these particular topics. Now, I didn't really discuss those topics because I don't have an interest in football, soccer, things like that. But the point is, they are able to dictate that. Right, but if you're a man, you're not going to be able to dictate that, women are always talking about makeup in the office, they're always gossiping about their personal lives, which is kind of inappropriate and you just don't want to listen to it, but you have to deal with it, right? And then we explain it here that she's saying everything you think of as wokeness is simply a downstream impact of feminization and putting women in a lot of these other environments, whether it's politics or work and things like that. Because what ends up happening is if you have more women in the workplace, you have more of a feminine work environment. And we know how women can be when it's convenient. They want to say they're oppressed and they play the victim. And once they play the victim, what do you have from what is the entire basis of woke culture? It's playing the victim. I'm the victim. I want special treatment, things like that. Now, you can see there's some validity to some of the points you see within woke culture. But the whole thing is who can play the biggest victim, who gets the most special treatment. And that's what happens when you have a lot of women in the workplace, right? Everyone can play the victim when it's convenient. Oh, it's because of my race. Oh, it's because of this reason or that reason. Now, it's so funny. At the same time this went viral, another thing went viral, right? Which was this woman you can see on your screen right here. She was working at Microsoft, right? But she didn't have experience to be here. She was a clear DEI hire. And it's going to be so funny because she got a senior management role working at Microsoft, and she'd never used a PC before in her life. You wouldn't believe this story. And it came out at the same time, Microsoft Windows 11, lots of people were criticizing it. As you can see here, I think I figured out why Windows 11 is unusable dog shit. She joined Microsoft 5 years ago as like some type of project manager, and it was the first time she ever used a PC. In her previous roles, she'd just done some kind of retail job. She'd never used a PC before. It's just completely ridiculous. Okay, so let's go through it. And this is an example of artificially propping up women in senior management roles. Microsoft ended free support of Windows 10 on October 14th, right? So what it ended up doing is forcing many people to pay for an upgrade of $30 in the first year. And many people say that Windows 11's performance has many issues. It has a lot of bugs, it has a lot of bloatware, it's quite slow and annoying to use. And then it says here, a viral X post on October 16th shares a Microsoft product manager. So she worked as a product manager on her LinkedIn profile. She had no PC ownership before she was working at Microsoft as a product manager. This is Microsoft DEI in action, right? This is the level of dysfunction you are all dealing with. And that's why, people are watching my channel, because you're resonating with this. You're like, yeah, this is a real issue. It's not just me, Ethan, who experienced it. It's not just you. You can't deal with the gaslighting when you're at work, pretending that you're the person who's, being a misogynist, hating women, hating DEI, whatever. These are real complete failings because these companies are pushing this globalist agenda of diversity. A viral X post on October the 16th shows a product manager saying they had no PC ownership, and it made people who are using Windows, and everyone uses Windows more or less, people are more frustrated. Lots of people are complaining about the hiring practices. Microsoft have rolled out AI enhancements to improve productivity and things like that. What it's saying is that companies are taking shortcuts. They're outsourcing work to, and I'm ethnically Indian, just for the record before I say this, they're outsourcing work to India or maybe other lower cost of labor countries that sometimes the quality of labor isn't good. They're focusing on AI, and I'm not saying AI is terrible or AI is going to take every job, but some of these companies, they want to save money so quickly. They're using AI, and even a Microsoft, they might not be using AI in the best way. Just removing software engineers, having more AI, and then it's creating more dysfunction, and the AI isn't trained. It needs additional people to support and develop it. So they're kind of making shortcuts in terms of outsourcing AI. And then also, for the sake of political correctness, they have more DEI hires, like this woman, right? She was actually, I think she has from an Indian background, but she was in London for many years of her life before she moved to Seattle in America to work at Microsoft as a product manager, right? So the point I'm trying to make here is these are three major issues that are impacting the work environment. Not only outsourcing because you're losing jobs, but lower quality. Not only AI because you're losing jobs, but also lower quality for typically higher price. And then you've got these DEI hires who are making the workplace completely intolerable for anyone who stays there and still has a job. So let's go through this in detail. So this is someone who's called Lane on the blockchain. I think I figured out why Windows 11 is unusable dog shit. It has 500,000 views. She says, well, this is a screenshot from this person's Windows profile on the Windows Microsoft corporate website. She says she moved to Seattle with her husband several years ago. She'd never worked in digital design, but somehow she got hired in Microsoft as a product manager. She comes from the print publishing world. She was printing books like manually, like kids' books and things like that, probably working in a local print shop. So she went from working in a local print shop, probably on minimum wage, all the way up to a senior management role in Microsoft. When she entered Microsoft 5 years ago, it was the first time she used a PC. I don't know how can you be a woman like this? Maybe she's in her mid-20s or older. She doesn't look that old, but she never used a PC in her life. Almost everyone has used a PC in their life, right? So it's kind of ridiculous. She said she started working on the services and storefronts and Microsoft Rewards. She moved on to the Windows team, became a designer, working on a new signature feature for Windows 11 widgets. And again, another thing people complain about are widgets. And what this reminds me of is there's so many bad features in a lot of the tech you use daily, and you might not put it down to a DEI hire, but it probably is, right? You go to the airport, lots of people complaining about DEI in airports and the airline industry. And I'm not saying everyone from different genders or races are not good at their job. I'm just saying, if you're hiring people on the basis of, oh, we have a quota of to hire 30% of a particular race or 50% woman, it just becomes ridiculous because you're not hiring the best people for the job. And then, yeah, and again, another thing is, and she moved from London to Seattle, from what I've read on this and a few other sites. Yeah, she lived in London before she moved to Seattle, as you can see here, second paragraph. It's like you're also hiring a lot of migrants. And I'm not saying all migrants are bad people or they can't do their job. It's like, they're cutting corners in so many ways, charging higher and higher prices for these services. And it's like they ruin the work environment and they ruin your life outside of work. And we all know what it's like when you're using your phone and they've got an update and the update is like worse than the previous version because they've got some DEI hire to create a new feature you don't even want to use. So other people are complaining about the widgets that she created. They didn't even know it was her until recently, right? So it's not like they're blaming her and making it a race issue. It's just a reoccurring thing. She's using widgets to make it more personalized for people to use. And then she says, you don't have to switch between devices and break your workflow. And it's just completely, it's just people who are not right for the job are being put in so many different positions of leadership. You can look at the government in the UK, certain people in government in the US too. We don't have to go through names, whatever your political views would be. You're just like, these people aren't really fit to be having control over your life and impacting your life in such a negative way. Now, this really makes me think, because we got to think about all the out of work US tech workers, right? Because there's so many people dealing with layoffs, but these DEI hires are keeping their job in some cases. And then somehow there are guys who maybe, men or women actually, who would be quite skilled in the tech field, but they can't get a job because a woman like this is gonna be clogging up the job market, keeping the jobs, because Microsoft probably doesn't want to be on record with a lot of other companies where they've fired maybe 100,000 people, whatever that would be, and then it's like 50% people of ethnic minorities, and then people are going to create a big issue about that and go, oh, you're firing people because of their race, and then there's a class action lawsuits. They've created this problem themselves, going on about DEI for the last few years. Now, if they fire these people, you're going to have these crazy liberals protesting and making it about race or gender. And I think about all the skilled people who can't get a job because people like this have a job. And it is quite ridiculous. And it makes me think why she was hired from a business perspective if we take out the political correctness. And it's like, okay, maybe she was hired as an employee from London to move to Seattle because she'd accept a lower wage than a local US worker. What is actually going on here? Is it just a political correct play? And the other thing is, she mentioned something here that's quite worrying. She's introduced this new signature feature for Windows 11 widgets. She measured success by one thing, how it could make people happy. Now, how do you measure success in a business? By making people happy or making profit? And this is what I mean. When you have a feminized work environment, you make things about emotion and not skill. You make things about making people feel good, which you should maybe do in a family setting as a mother treating kids or her husband, wife treating her husband, but not what you do in the workplace environment. Workplace should be about profit. It should be about efficiency, productivity, new ideas that are going to make money, not making people happy, particularly because many people are complaining about hobbies, about these widgets. And you can see on the side of the screen, someone called Real Jeff G is saying, she's the one responsible for bringing widgets to Windows. It's the first thing I disable whenever I buy a new computer. And then someone else is saying, oh, I don't like widgets. They've ruined everything. Do you get me? Everything's like a web app. They're complaining about a lot of her output. And again, it's not because they're targeting her. It's because these people are not skilled at doing these type of senior roles, right? How long until you have like a DEI hire replacing someone like Steve Jobs and they're just not good at the job? Then she mentions here at the end, she put her work on pause for 1 year when she had her first child. Now, this is on the Microsoft websites. They want to brag that, yeah, we give good maternity leave. You get tons of time off work if you have a kid. And it really raises the question, why did she go back to work? If you have a young kid and you just get, and I've seen this in the corporate environment and finance too, these women will have a kid and as soon as they can, they'll run back to their job and their kid's just dumped with a childcare, a babysitter, whatever it would be. It's completely abandonment of the basic mother instinct to just focus on your career. Is completely ridiculous, right? Why come back to work? Why go back to being a corporate slave when you do something real like raising a kid? And it reminds me, when you see these emotions, you see these people in positions of power, the whole economy is fake, the money's fake, the jobs are fake, the management are fake. It's completely ridiculous. It's that completely like the feminized workplace in one sentence is, oh, I'm working to make people happy. You can say you're working to make people happy to make a profit, but that's the whole goal, is profit. It's not making people happy. And this is the type of career jumps they can make that you can make. She went from working on printing in, literally printing at a print shop, printing children's books, windows, display posters, and printing stuff like that, to working at the Microsoft store, to designing widgets for like billions of users of Microsoft Windows. This is the type of career jumps that you can make if you are a DEI hire. No other demographic would be allowed to do this. We've got here someone called Millennius, and they're saying the whole widget concept is ridiculously clumsy, which that woman introduced onto Windows. Information is cluttered. It gives you stuff you don't really want to know, distractions. It hogs the resources of the PC, making it slower. It's an eyesore, and it's an advert shithole in extreme cases. So, but did it make you happy? Someone's going, well, did it make you happy? No, I've disabled all that crap on my devices. I don't like the widgets. Now, I don't like the widgets either. I think the widget that appears, which is just, the small little information updates, news updates, weather updates. The weather update is fine because I have that, I think, on my home screen. They automatically added it to my Windows, even though I never wanted it. I keep my home screen and my lock screen quite simple. It's just a background and the time, but it has the weather and things like that. That might be interesting, but I don't want news updates. I don't want never-ending negative news appearing when I click on my start menu and things like that, or click for the calendar and then it gives me the most negative news you could possibly see. I don't want to pay attention to that type of stuff. It's become ridiculous. Then we've got another comment from this woman who wrote the article, just going back to that. She says that by far the most important implication of the great feminization thesis is this: if wokeness is the result of a demographic feminization, then wokeness will never be over as long as the demographic remains the same. Now, basically what she's saying is, if you want to remove woke, which many people want to get rid of woke in the workplace and throughout culture, you're going to have to remove woman, or drastically reduce woman from those environments. And you can't remove the woke culture without removing woman. And I'm not saying all women are bad. I'm just saying, what type of environment do women create, right? Versus what does a woman-dominated environment create versus a male-dominated environment create? What do you have when you have a work environment, which typically exists right now, you have a decent number of women, let's just say 30 to 50% in most offices. Then you have a lot of these simp guys who are pushovers, who let women get away with creating lots of unnecessary drama, making the woman the center of attention. Then you have guys like me or you who might be like, well, this is ridiculous, right? This is time wasting, this is gossipy, this is time wasting meetings, spending the first 5-10 minutes of a meeting talking about things that have nothing to do with work is becoming quite annoying. Now, we all know what that's like. So the whole point is, once you have to deal with that time and time again, you just become like, I don't want to deal with this as a guy. And you can't really speak up because all these and these beta males, these beta orbiters, these henpeck husbands, things like that, they're going to jump to the woman's defense, even if she's being completely, time wasting and inefficient. And this is the term here, right? Woke culture. It goes back to Schrodinger's feminist, if you're aware of that concept. Schrodinger's feminist is essentially that a woman can shift between two positions. When it's convenient, she'll be oppressed and she'll get special treatment as being using that as leverage and sympathy, because she's oppressed and she's the damsel in distress. She's Princess Peach in the Mario game, and she needs a man to save her, and she demands special treatment or advantage when it's more beneficial for her, while claiming to be inequality, right? And then she's hooking up with Bowser, and then Mario's playing the simp, the Captain Save-A-Hole, to save Princess Peach. And you see this in the workplace environment too, where men are just going over and beyond to basically provide additional help for women when you're meant to believe they're equal to you in doing the same amount of work. Let's give a couple examples here. So this is the thing. Woke culture is direct derivative of having women in the workplace. And this is a woman saying it, by the way, who's like an intellectual, who's written books and articles and things like that. She's saying, for example, sometimes women will say, oh, women aren't respected in the workplace, right after receiving a negative feedback from her manager. She doesn't want to take accountability. She doesn't want to take genuine constructive criticism. So if she gets negative feedback from her manager, she'll play the victim and not take it on board as constructive, something she has to improve. She'll just be like, oh, I'm the victim. It's misogyny, it's sexism, it's harassment. It's completely ridiculous. Another thing these woke feminists could say: society's pressuring women unfairly about their appearance, while using the same narrative online to attract a validation or sympathy or engagement, or using their appearances and flirting with the boss to move up in their career. The other thing is they could be demanding special treatment or advantage, right? They might expect lower performance standards or preferential promotions under gender balance initiatives, even when qualifications aren't equal. For example, they might be in the military. There's quite a few news articles in the last few years where they had to lower the military fitness standards so more women could be in the military and become soldiers, which is completely ridiculous, particularly when you need the military to be highly skilled, because you need them, of course, to be fighting in global conflicts. You need stronger men, not weaker women, for the sake of equality, particularly when you compare the gender equality DEI hires in America to what's going on in Russia, where they hire and train men in quite a strict way, quite a tough training. The last thing I would say would be, they used to talk about using female-only spaces or exemptions, right? Like skipping uncomfortable duties or tough criticism while insisting on equality or equal authority in influence and decision-making. That's another good example of essentially, you want female-only environments, but then you're giving special treatment to women and you're saying, okay, it's like in the gym, like women want to be in the same environment. The gym environment used to be great because it could just be men focused on self-improvement, quietly to themselves, or just discussing new ideas, maybe about a different fitness training program. And now it's all about women wearing yoga pants, trying to dress inappropriately, trying to get attention, walking around with their phone, trying to get a man cancelled if he looks in their direction, recording their workouts. And it's just become ridiculous. Like the gym environment's been ruined, right? So wokeness essentially arose at the same time many of these institutions were hiring more and more women. So it just shows, if you shift from majority male environments to hiring more and more women at, let's just say, 20 to 50% as women in that environment, it changes the complete dynamic. And everything you think of wokeness, prioritizing the feminine over the masculine, empathy over rationality, safety over risk, cohesiveness over competition, and that's how it ruins even basic male competition to produce higher and higher quality work. Now, if we really extend that to go back to the next point here. So what I noticed, I've got a lot of content for this video, so I'm going to split this video into two separate videos right now. But what I want to say before I move on, and we'll go through the rest of that article, we're going to go through some reactions in another video. That's just a good start to the topic. But what I want to tell you is, when it comes to a lot of these dynamics, you have to think about who's going to give you actual helpful, useful advice, rather than just wasting your time with cookie cutter corporate advice or just complaining about things. I'm trying to give you some decent analysis and help you in a very practical way, because the corporate world has been hijacked. Fake empathy, soft leadership, and men end up walking away because there's not a lot of merit for working hard. And I've spent over 10 years working at Goldman's, Morgan Stanley, HSBC, dealing with some of these dynamics, and I'm helping men rebuild their leverage, outsmart these bias systems, and earn 20 to 30% more by playing a new corporate game. And I've worked with clients. I'm going to share more experience of case studies and future videos. So listen, if you want to break free from our HR controlled politics, these feminized work environments, you may be looking for remote roles, you're looking at building a side business while you're working in your job, being more freedom focused, that's something I can help with. The system we're living in is only going to get weaker as we approach 2026. Schedule a call with me now to help you with your career, help you with your finances. And I've even got course videos that tell you how to deal with these girl bosses and these difficult managers and co-workers because of the feminized work environment. So if you want to reach out to me, feel free to reach out to me by the link in description. Before prices going to rise for my coaching in 2026, the job market's going to get even worse. And things are going to get tougher and tougher because people think, oh, DEI has disappeared now. It's just not going to be an issue, right? Or we're not going to have feminism anymore because they see Trump in leadership. No, these people, these DEI hires, these feminist work environments, they're not going to go away overnight. They're already entrenched in all these institutions. And also this establishment, regardless of maybe a bit of a pushback on DEI, they have a broader long-term agenda, right? We know the statistic that by 2030, 45% of women are going to be single. You're going to continue to see the gendered war, the gender divide between men and women. You're going to continue to see dynamics whereby you're going to have more and more women in the workplace. The office is going to be like daycare for adults, and you're going to have these type of difficult strain dynamics that are going to exist over the longer terms. There's no like short-term fix, but I can help you push forward in the next step to make it the best step in your career and your finances, so you can deal with these dynamics and really win when many people are losing. So, a link in description to speak with me. Let me know how you feel about this topic so far, and I'll see you in part 2 soon.